Welcome back to the channel, Union Arena players. My name is Damos, and thank you for everyone who has taken part in the second Union Arena community survey. This time around, we have over 150 responses. So let's go ahead, hop right in. But one thing I want to say, it's super important. Make sure to always fill out the questionnaires that are through the official channels, both on the social media as well as the product page for whatever IP is being released. You'll usually be able to find them right around the release date for that specific IP. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and go to our first section of the survey, which is questions on the official survey, but I went ahead and added them to the community survey just so we can get some data that we'll know that Bandai is getting. And as the first question, we have what type of player best describes you? This one's real simple. There's only 3 options: casual, competitive, collector. And it's really right down the middle almost. Obviously there's a couple collectors in there, but it's almost 50-50 for casual and competitive, with competitive actually being the most prominent here just by a couple percent. I do want to go ahead and show you a comparison from the last survey that we had, so let's go ahead and check that out. As you can see, the numbers do look very similar, and I just wanted to show this off to see if there was a difference from the extra results we got this time around. However, for this one, it does look like it's roughly the same. Some of these are going to change though. Let's go ahead and look at the next question, which is Union Arena your main trading card game? And 69.5% said yes, while 30% of people said no. And as a comparison, for the last time around, it was 44% saying no, with 55% saying yes. So it's actually increased quite a bit. And it makes sense that the people filling out these surveys might care a little bit more about Union Arena than the average person. So it makes sense that the yes option is more than the no option. For our next question, we have what are you most wanting to see in future Union Arena products? Now, this one may seem simple as it only has 4 options, but realistically, this question is super important. And as you can see, 51% of people just want a title that they like to join the game. Not too many people really care about serial number cards being included in the game, and almost the same number for autograph cards. It's really just the titles they want being in the game, as well as the titles releasing at the same time as the Japanese and English releases. And from the last survey we had, it was pretty much the same. As you can see, the responses were a little bit less, so the percentages are a little more skewed, but as you can see, everyone still just cares about having a title that they like joining the game. For this next question, we have what is the most exciting part of Union Arena English version to you? And we can see that there are 3 that really stand out. The first one is with 48 votes. There are lots of different anime, games, titles involved, which again goes back to that last question. You just want to see a title that you like in the game. And personally, I always choose this next one with 37 votes. You can play with different titles using the same set of rules. But realistically, it's the same as the other answer. You just want to be able to play with titles you like. And the other option that has a lot of votes with 43 is you can feel the influence of various titles' settings in the game strategy. So all 3 of these answers are essentially saying the same thing as the last question. Just have titles we want in the game and it's going to be a good time. I do want to point out 2 outliers though. There are lots of alt art designs and it includes brand new art made specifically for the game. Not many people really voted for that, and I think that speaks to how the game is portrayed, that it's supposed to be this cool collectible game, but realistically, it's a lot of screenshots and not a lot of art specifically made for the game. Even though some of the alt arts are really nice, it's just one of those things where it's not as good as it could be. But moving on to our next question, we have titles below are the lineup for Union Arena Japanese version. Please choose the top 3 titles from the list that you would buy cards for if they were in the Union Arena English lineup. Now, as we can see, and probably what anyone may have guessed if they really took a look at this question, is that My Hero is easily beating everyone. I do want to note that the third option for that time I got reincarnated as a slime was only on this survey because I had created it a few days before the announcement. So 15 votes kind of were a little bit wasted here, but we can see that my hero is just blowing everyone out of the water. Same with ReZero with 41 votes, and then everyone else is below 30. Personally, I always choose Blue Lock, Haikyuu, and Code Geass Rose the recapture for my surveys, but let me know what you choose for yours. And if we want to go ahead and compare this to our last survey, it's going to look a little bit different because there wasn't a 3-title restriction on the last one. But realistically, as you can see, a lot of it is the same. And if you remember this question from the official surveys, you may remember the next question: which of the following titles is your favorite? So this question, Union Arena developers are just trying to find out what people like the most. And as you can see from the survey, Dandadan leads by a long shot. And then we see popular titles like JoJo's following behind, as well as Freyrin. But also the newly added Final Fantasy series to the surveys is in second place with 46 votes. Now this one, there was no restriction, so anybody could vote for all of them if they wanted, or one or none, which it looks like 3 people did. Personally on this one, I would go for Dandadan, Fire Force, Death Note, Apothecary Diaries, Freyrin, Final Fantasy, Durarara, Mushoku Tensei, and Persona. And if we compare this to last time, there is going to be a lot of different answers. And as you can see, things like Chainsaw Man that were super in the lead are now official sets coming out next year. So we can tell that Union Arena is listening. Now for our next question, I went ahead and asked if you could bring any one title not listed previously to the Union Arena English version, which title would you choose? And these were the top titles from everyone that submitted, because it was a free write-in spot where you could write literally anything, and these were the top choices. 22% of players chose Naruto, 11% said Fairy Tail, and from then on, it was just smaller numbers, but I did want to go ahead and include all of these suggestions so everyone could see what was said. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff. Some people wrote some crazy stuff in here and I kept it in, so you know who you are. But then there's also ones that are in here that shouldn't be, like My Hero, because that was on the previous answer, but hey, that person really wants My Hero. Personally, if I could add anything, because we already have Code Geass, one of my favorite anime of all time, I would want to choose Food Wars. That's my personal favorite anime of all time, and I think it would be a really funny set, but that's just me. And this was the last question in section 1, so we're moving on to section 2, which is just general questions. And this one is, are you able to access Union Arena product in your area? And as you can see, most people say yes. However, there are a few people that say sometimes, but not always, or that we had a few answers that people live in a different country and don't receive official support. And unfortunately, a few people did respond that no stores in their area carry Union Arena, but it is looking good, especially compared to last time. The numbers have gone down for people who said no or sometimes, and more people said yes. So product allocation and the game is getting out there, which is a good thing. So shout out to that. For our next question, we have how many local card stores in your area support Union Arena? And on this one, I forgot to put 0, and it was a required question, so that was my bad. Hopefully those people went ahead and just answered 1, so that number may be skewed a little bit, because we obviously saw in the last question there was a few people who couldn't get Union Arena product. But with 5+ being the biggest percentage here, we can see that a lot of people can play Union Arena. And if we do compare this to the last survey, I did have 0 on there, which is crazy that I didn't have it on there this time, but we can see that it was only a small number of people and the 5+ still dominated, so that's good to know it's still going strong. However, you can see that the percentages did go down a little bit from the last survey, so potentially some stores may have stopped supporting it. For our next question, we have, do the local card stores near you get enough product for your community if they order it? So this is realistically only for the stores that actually support Union Arena, and most people are saying yes, with a little over 50%. And there's also 30% that say most do, but some do not. And then we do have a few that say pretty much no. And if we compare this to last time, the numbers have changed drastically. This is a really good sign that more stores and people have access to the product. So Bandai, thank you very much for this, because I know this was a huge issue in my area for certain stores, and now it's not as big of an issue. Next up, we have the question, have you ever purchased product for a set after its event season was over and prizes were no longer available for that set, such as rare battles or store tournaments? And it looks like 76% said yes. I honestly thought a lot more people would say no. Personally, I don't think I've ever purchased anything from a set after the store tournament prizing and rare battles are over with. By that time, I already have all the product I need, and there's really just no point in going in unless I'm hunting for something. For the next couple questions, I wanted to go ahead and ask about events. Which events, if any, have you participated in since the official launch of the English version of Union Arena? And this question, most people said release events, store tournaments, rare battles, and a couple people were able to make it to the offline regionals. And if we go ahead and compare this to last time, it's pretty much the same numbers. However, the only additional option was that offline regional, because there wasn't a regional at that point of the first survey that I did. And speaking of regionals, are you happy with the amount of regionals within the 2025 to 2026 season, which has been officially announced as 5 regionals and 1 LCQ? And as you can see, most people say no, they want more. Now, there's obviously a lot of people who said that they don't have an opinion on this. A couple people said yes, they are fine with it, but most players, half of the response pool, said they want more, and I agree. And I'm not saying this because I want to go ahead and try and secure my invite, because my invite's already secured. I've already top 8'd a regional, so I don't need another regional. But the ability to play in these high intensity and highly competitive events is super fun. And being able to go to multiple that happen to be close to me is cool, but that's just not happening. And it's really not viable to fly across the country to play Union Arena, especially if you're just going to go ahead and get specialed out of life in round 1. It just feels terrible. For the next question, we're going to go ahead and look at the finals. And during the championship finals in February of 2026, one player should secure their invite to the World Championship. Do you think there should be more than one representative for North America? And most players say yes, 2 people should be able to go, first and second. I did put an option in there for United States and Canada, because technically North America, which currently Union Arena supports Canada and the United States, so it would make sense that potentially one from each region, which could have their own nationals. So there could be 2, but realistically there's not going to be, because I don't think there's a Bandai Fest in Canada anytime soon. And if you heard my voice when reading this question, I emphasized should a little bit, and that's because as of 11/16 of 2025, the Union Arena Championships finals page has no longer mentioned the first place player securing their invite to the World Championship in Japan. So I went ahead and asked, do you think the winner will be invited to Japan? And this one was kind of all over the board. I don't really think anyone's really talked about this. I haven't seen anyone post about it anywhere, but I think this is super important to bring up, because the page did say that the winner of nationals will go to Japan. However, now it's not going to. So the answers I put are yes, I believe the player will go and be able to play with no restrictions. So essentially the Japan card pool. And 34% of players who answered this question said they believe that's the way they're going to do it. Unfortunately, I don't believe that. I believe if they are going to go, they would be playing with the English card pool. The next answer I put is yes, I believe the player will go, but not be able to play like in 2024. And honestly, that kind of seems more likely now that they went ahead and removed the information about going to Japan. However, it may just be a simple no that they're not going to be able to go anymore. And that's kind of sad and it makes the finals less exciting. But only time will tell, so we'll go ahead and have to wait and see for that specific answer. Now, moving on to section 3, we have game improvements. Now, since you started playing, have you noticed or heard about the game being improved? And hopefully, after a couple of these earlier questions, you've seen firsthand that the responses that the players in the community have had prove that the game is improving, even if it's slowly. The first survey I had put up was 5 months ago, and so this is almost half a year later that we've done this survey, and obviously the game has improved a little bit within that time frame. And most people do recognize it. However, there is 21% of answers that say, I'm not sure. So some people might not really be paying attention, or they just may not really have seen it in their local scene. And I do think that's important to take note of because not everybody sees the same thing. For the next question, I went ahead and asked, what are your general thoughts on small scale event pricing within the Union Arena English version? So essentially your locals. And most people said local event pricing is okay. Some people said it's bad, some people said it's great, but most people, 55%, said it's just okay. And personally, I agree because it could be a lot worse and it could be a lot better. But I don't think this technically warrants a bad answer. Then I went ahead and asked the same question, but for large scale event pricing, which is going to be considered side events, regionals, and the championship finals. And as you can see, a lot of people said, I have no opinions on large scale event pricing. Now, just because if you've not participated in a large scale event doesn't mean you can't see what the pricing is for the large scale event. So honestly, I thought a lot more people would go ahead and answer this question as great, okay, or bad, which a lot of people once again just said okay. And I think I agree. I think that the regional pricing is on the cusp of being good. Although heavily favored for first place, I think it's fine as it is. But I do know that there are a few things I would adjust within the regional pricing, but they're really just minor things, and we can get into that later. However, for the finals is where I think the pricing is honestly just bad, especially if the player is not going to Worlds. All they're getting is a trophy that they recently announced, which they announced that after taking away the wording about going to Japan, and they get a playmat or two, some action points. Like most people get the action points and most people will get multiple of the action points. So realistically, the pricing is just not as good as it could be for the finals. And to go ahead and compare this to the last survey, I went ahead and separated it on this survey. However, on the last one, they were together. And as you can see, again, most people just think the pricing is okay. But at the time, the large scale event pricing was considered bad. At this time, there wasn't any large scale events, and the only large scale event that had happened previously was Bandai Fest Orlando at the beginning of 2025, which was not good. The first place through fourth place players got some playmats, and that was it. Now, speaking of pricing, if you think pricing could be improved, how would you recommend Bandai provide better pricing for future events? And there's a lot of different suggestions that I got, but these were the ones I thought were the most prevalent within everybody's answers. And I went ahead and starred the most important ones because those ones went ahead and were mentioned multiple times. So as you can see, bring back rare battle AP sleeves is first on that list with 5 stars next to it because so many people realize that the AP sleeves are gone and they want those as pricing. Now, there was multiple people asking for playmats for local pricing, and I do think that is warranted because the surveys keep asking, do you want playmats? Do you want playmats? Do you want playmats? And I think a lot of people say yes, but then they only give playmats to the top 4 players at regionals. And this one was mentioned a few times, so I went ahead and put 2 stars next to it. And as you can see, there's a lot of different things, but the important ones are relevant and playable event exclusive promos, because the store tournament promos and the rare battle promos are realistically just not always good cards. And then we have unique illustrations of important cards, which would be stuff like your SRs and certain rares that don't even get alt arts. The players do want some nicer looking cards to be in their decks. The next important one I have on here is a store tournament monthly rotation. And while I think monthly rotation would be a little too much because some groups are a lot larger than others, if you only have 4 or 5 people normally playing at your locals, of course everyone's going to have all their stuff by the month's end. But if you have 15 to 20 to 30 players at your locals, which some places do, it's going to be a lot harder getting the cards you need within a shorter time frame. So I think having a bi-monthly rotation would work out just fine. If you really want those cards, then you can go to multiple events, but 3 months just takes too long. And then there's also larger variety of prizes for store tournaments. This one was suggested a lot of times. It's hard to want to play for specific pricing if an IP you like isn't out at the time, because you're just not getting any support for your deck, any new cards, whether it's specifically a new alt art or a brand new card, and it just feels bad paying for these events every single week when you actually just don't want the cards. Now for the next question, I asked something that I think a lot of people may not have really given too much thought to, but I said, which color do you think is currently the weakest and needs more support? Now we have the lead of 35% being, I don't think any specific color is weaker than the others. And honestly, that's the easy answer if you don't want to actually sit here and think about every single deck in the game. And it really is just the easy answer out. But we do have 19% of people saying yellow, and I think that's where I would go with as well. Yellow color trigger is honestly the best color trigger in the game. However, all the decks within the yellow color are just not as good as the other colors within the sets. And it's really sad to see because there's some really cool mechanics within yellow, but the decks are just not that good. Now, we do have kind of an outlier with the Kaiju 8 set, because that one has 2 pretty good decks, but it was only a set with 2 colors, so there's a lot more support for those 2 decks to work. But realistically, what surprises me most is that blue is the least answered color. And while I do think blue has some good decks, I don't think the color is all that powerful. Personally, I would say yellow over anything, but the next color I would say is blue. I think a lot of the blue decks just lack something, and it's really sad to see. For example, both of the brand new blue Rurouni Kenshin decks are just terrible compared to the other decks. So hopefully if that set gets a volume 2, we get some support for blue. And speaking of support, for our next question, I asked which previously released sets, if any, would you like to see benefit from a new card selection binder like Bleach received, and Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer. And if you weren't aware, Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer, those binder cards were placed inside of the Demon Slayer Volume 1 and Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 2, while Bleach had its cards as a completely brand new binder to buy separately. And as you can see here, most people said Full Metal Alchemist. I think a lot of people want the support for yellow and purple, because obviously blue is the best deck in the game, having won 2 regionals so far and getting second at 2 other regionals. So surely they don't want more support for blue. But we also have sets like One Punch Man and Hunter x Hunter, which I definitely think need that support. And with both sets not currently being caught up to the anime, I could definitely see that in the future. Personally, for this question, I would answer Code Geass, but I think anyone watching my channel might be able to tell that if they have seen my avatar. I did find it funny though that a lot of people did answer Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer as well as Bleach, because those 3 already have them. And it's nice to see that a lot of people chose Nikkei as well. So hopefully that means they do want the support to come over from Japan when they get that newest set in February. For the next question, I asked which new format, if officially introduced into the game, would you like to see receive either local or side event tournaments with official prize support? And for this first page of answers, I went ahead and put all of the formats that I could think of, but I did leave this answer open so you could fill out your own. And that's why there's 3 pages of other answers. And as you can see by the pie chart, there's a lot of different answers that people filled in. Now, the first 2 answers that you can see are taking up most of the pie chart with rainbow format and cross format. Now, these are formats that I've specifically played at my locals and in my area. And honestly, both are incredibly fun. Rainbow format, if you don't know, is the same set and any color generates any energy. So essentially, if it's within an IP, you can use it, and some cards synergize amazingly and some cards do not work with anything else, and it's a really fun format. Personally, my favorite, however, is cross format, where you can use any set, but it has to be the same color. So being able to specifically grab certain cards from different IPs to make your deck really good is really fun to do. And funnily enough, when I first played this format, I actually played yellow because I wanted to experience what a good yellow deck would be like. And obviously with cards like Roid Lloyd, where you can raid anything on it, the decks can be crazy. But I did want to go ahead and talk about all of the other answers that everybody put. And realistically, I could have consolidated it a little bit, but I went ahead and just left everybody's answers in. So you'll see a few multiples here. On the left, I went ahead and put the answers that were from the official survey that I added. And then on the right, you'll see the answers from everybody else. As you can see, things like the 3v3 or multicolor melee or starter deck tournaments are popular with the community. Personally, I've never tried the multicolor melee with how the rules are set up. However, we did do a larger tournament here where we had 2 specific decks and we had to win with both. So it's essentially the same thing. It's just you get less of an option and there's no banning decks. You also don't have to tell your opponent what the deck was either. But again, it just goes back to that best of 3 that everyone wants. Now for this next question, I went ahead and asked, would you like if the Bandai TCG Plus app included a feature to see your win and loss ratio or other stats over a specific time period? And I think because this data is out there, it's so simple to add it in. However, they may not have just thought of this. And so I think this is something that can be coded into the Bandai app and you can be able to see your win-loss ratio over a store tournament period or over the year. And I think it would be really cool to see how you're actually doing in the game. Obviously, the Bandai app works fine as is. And I think that's why a lot of people just put, I don't mind either way. But as you can see, a lot of people, 75%, would enjoy if they could see their win-loss ratio over a specific amount of time. Next up, I went ahead and asked, what are your thoughts on the developers removing cards from the English version of the game, either permanently or until a later time? And as you can see, most people chose that they would like Bandai to just adjust the game through the banned and restricted cards list. And this is pretty much exactly the same as what it was on the last survey. So it definitely seems like the community is still pretty aligned on this. For the next question, there was a lot of answers. So again, I went ahead and added in all of the questions and what they had as votes. I went ahead and asked, what are your thoughts on an official online game client? And as you can see, most people said that they would like to be able to play online with friends. But we do see also that there are 0 votes on people saying that they would spend money to unlock cards and special rarities for their decks. Now, this was a question where you could only answer one answer. So I think that people obviously chose what resonated with them more. But that is interesting to see that players would try and stay away from spending money. For the next question, I wanted to go ahead and touch upon a popular topic. If you could change box and case hits, how would you do so? So I said choose up to 3, and then I went ahead and explained the breakdown just in case you didn't know. but most people, 65 votes, said there should be one 3-star guaranteed in every case. And the reason I only allowed 3 choices is because I think there are more than 3 good options. Realistically, if I was Bandai, I don't think I'd put a 3-star guaranteed in every case, but I would say it could be 1 in every 2 cases or 1 in every 3 cases. And then I would definitely up the 2-star amount to at least 2 or 3. Personally, I would like to see at least 3 foil APs guaranteed in every case, but I would also like to see 7 or 8 SRs guaranteed in every box. Same thing with the second most voted, at least 2 1-stars or higher guaranteed within a box. However, if we look at the third highest voted answer, we see that people over 2 stars and 3 stars and SRs being in cases and serialized and signed action points, they wanted APs to not take the slot of SRs. And I think that is really important to note. And that's why I wanted only to choose up to 3, because I wanted to make sure we saw what was most important to the player base. For the next question, I went ahead and had, were you aware that the finals match of Top Cut during an offline regional was announced to be best of 3 back on May 21st, 2025, but has yet to be implemented? And most people said they didn't know this. A couple people said they did, but they also didn't know it hadn't been implemented. And I wanted to go ahead and show the slide that Union Arena themselves showed to us that specifically says Union Arena offline regionals Top Cut finals match, best of 3 for the game match. This isn't Bandai Fest, this isn't the finals, this was advertised as offline regionals. On these offline regionals, technically there's no Top Cut, so I don't know why they specifically. Now, technically at the regionals we've had, there has been no Top Cut. It's only been standard Swiss rounds, which go until there's an undefeated. However, I do think top 8 needs to play it out because they are all the same record outside of the undefeated player, and it's solely based on tiebreakers. So if you beat someone in round 1 and they choose to drop because they want to go do side events, how is that your fault? Personally, if there was a top 8 during the regional I played in, I think I was winning the whole thing. But can't do anything about that, so let's move on to the next question. Should Bandai change Union Arena to best of 3? And this is definitely a popular topic as well. Obviously, a lot of people are just going to say yes, but I wanted to go ahead and specify a few different things. Because I know a lot of people do enjoy Union Arena because it's so quick. And I think that's fine, especially for your locals that might only be 3 rounds or 4 rounds, which is why I wanted to put in here that at a regional or higher event or at finals only and things like that, I wanted to be able to give the options. But realistically, yes is the easy answer. And even with best of 3, Union Arena is still very quick. Now, moving on to our second to last question, we have, if you could ask Bandai directly for one thing to improve the Union Arena English version, what would that be? And again, we had a write-in question where I had to go through a lot of different answers. And as you can see, here are some of the top answers. The English and Asia simultaneous releases. So that would be good if we could catch up and have all of our releases at the same time. We also had someone who said new title monthly and volume 2s bi-monthly. And you may think this might be bad or might be a lot, but specifically that volume 2 being bi-monthly is really nice, because if that was guaranteed, then we'd have a lot of support for older sets, which is nice. And then we'd probably get into volume 3s as well, which is really cool. And speaking of older sets, the next one is improve older sets to combat power creep. It does feel really bad when you go into an event with your favorite deck and it just stands no chance because a brand new set just came out. And I think that's a huge reason why this next one is not happening. Bringing over more Asia exclusive sets instead of only worldwide releases. It's really hard to bring over sets that are just going to do nothing in our meta because we're already so far ahead. Specifically, one set I really want to see is Blue Lock. Unfortunately, all of the decks are just not good at all. So as of right now, there's no point in releasing it because the decks just aren't going to do anything. And as you saw at the beginning of this, there's not a lot of just collectors in the game. However, with the set they're releasing next year, that time I got reincarnated as a slime, they're doing both volume 1 and 2. So maybe that's how they release sets here. They can release the older version and then release a brand new volume 2 at the same time to bring over those sets from Japan. Then one we already spoke about, an official online game client. And then obviously the big one, better pull ratios for SRs, alt arts, case hits, all of that. So many people suggested this, and that's just what they want. They just want to feel better when they spend their money on the game. And we want to spend our money on the game. We want the shiny cards. We want to see the nice cards and be able to play the cards and not feel bad about buying a $50, $60, $70 box and pulling an alt art guaranteed, but it's only $3. Sure, sometimes you can hit big on a 2-star, and that's a case hit, 1 in every 16 boxes. But even then, some of those 2-stars are less than $40. That's not even the amount to make up the box, let alone 16 of them. Obviously, this is a touchy subject for a lot of people, so I think everyone who plays this game knows that better pull ratios is what we need, most importantly. And a lot of players did also mention to slow down the releases. And I went ahead and wrote that stores and players are impacted because players can't always come up with a bunch of money to shell out every single month to buy new decks every single month to keep up with the meta. But also, it's bad on stores because if a brand new set comes out the next month and they haven't sold through their product from the previous month, that product can just sit there and sit there and sit there. And as you saw from one of those previous questions I asked, where people may not have bought stuff after the sets are over and done with. Personally, I don't do a lot of that. And I know a lot of people in my area don't. So it's really disheartening to stores to get product and then just not be able to do anything with it because there's already a new set or the set just turned out to not be good. Then we have other things like more communication, not restricting large events to big cities, and being able to use Asia exclusive APs. But we also have big ones like store regionals and fixing the mulligan, and obviously best of 3 and no card removals from the set. So hopefully with the community filling out this survey, we can hope that Bandai sees that on their surveys, and we want them to see this information. Now there were 2 more suggestions that I did want to go over real quickly. And that was these. If you have no intention of ever letting us play our cards on our opponent's turn, then allow us to ready our APs at the end of the turn, as this is something that will not substantially impact gameplay either. Now, I did want to bring up that Bandai is letting us play on our opponent's turn. After reading this, I immediately thought of this combo and how this is something that's pretty common within the deck, where if your greed is sidelined, you bring back the 3-cost Ling and use its win played ability to then play the Lan Fan from your hand, and then you can pay an AP to switch this character to active so she can be a blocker. And I don't know if this is the only instance of where you can use your AP on your opponent's turn, but this is a newer set and Bandai is not keeping us from playing on our opponent's turn. It's just up to if your deck has the capability or not. And then the other improvement was, can you have a hub for support for certain cards and situations? Looking up judge rules online isn't sufficient. So I think this suggestion was more catered towards the frequently asked questions page because it doesn't usually go over every situation you can think of, because as a developer and as someone who really understands the rules, it's hard to think of things that someone would think of that's not super engrossed in the game. But I do have a suggestion for this player. Go ahead and head on over to the Bandai Organized Play Discord. There's a ruling question channel in the Discord where you can ask a question at any time of day or night, and someone will be online and get an answer for you really quickly. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description for the Discord so you can go ahead and join. Or if you want, go ahead and just Google Bandai Organized Play Discord and you'll find it as the first result. And finally, moving on to the last question we have here today. This was one I had on the previous survey, so let's go ahead and check this out. During the Bandai Fest World Tour in Japan on March 15, 2025, the Union Arena Grand Finals game ended with one player not being able to play a single card due to not seeing a zero-cost card. Do you think the rules should be changed to accommodate this? And this is specifically talking about the Mulligan. So as you can see, this is pretty divided, and I went ahead and put all of the different answers up there up top. So if you want to read that, go ahead and pause them, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to compare the last survey results as well. And here you can see that it is pretty divided on that one as well. However, we can see that the amount of people who said no, the game is fine as is, has increased exponentially. Now, I did go ahead and remove the answer for the best of 3 for Top Cut because obviously that hasn't been implemented yet. But I did go ahead and put in, if you don't have a 0 and no cards on the field, you could pay an AP, and a lot of people seem to like that option as well. Personally, I don't know how you would fix the Mulligan and keep everything fair and balanced, but that's something for Bandai to figure out. But I do think a lot of people want the Mulligan because there's only 17.9% saying no, the game is fine, and the rest of it is saying Mulligan, please fix it. Anyways, that's all the data I have for you today. I do want to go ahead and quickly give a special message. Thank you for watching. This community is wonderful, and I'm glad I'm able to provide this information for everyone. But be sure to always fill out the official surveys to get your voice heard, and hopefully someone from the Union Arena development team sees this video and takes the community's thoughts into consideration. I appreciate everyone who participated. Thank you again. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more Union Arena content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.